Welcome to Garden of Lights. I'm Susan Howington, Family Consumer Science Agent with the Henry County Cooperative Extension, partnership with the University of Georgia Cooperative Extension. Today we're going to talk about zucchini. We'll also hear from Frank Hancock, our Agriculture and Natural Resource Agent, and he's going to talk a little bit about the corn in our back of our building. See you back in just a little bit on Garden of Lights. Welcome back to Garden of Lights. Today we're talking about zucchini, and you know, I love squash, and I guess I could say that zucchini is a squash, but it's also one of my favorites. And you know, this came out of Frank's garden, and I can say that he is pretty good at growing different types of vegetables in the garden. But zucchinis are wonderful. They are, as far as calorie goes, about a cup of this sliced up, you're only going to get 20 calories from this, and you just cannot beat that. As far as what you're looking for when you're selecting them, even at the grocery store, and when you're looking for them in your garden, you don't want to get them too big because it takes away from the taste, and also the seeds are going to be a lot bigger on the inside. So look for ones that are firm, shiny. So this is what you're looking for. Also, you don't want any bruises because that's going to have an effect also. But as far as eating it, oh, it's wonderful. It is sodium-free, cholesterol and fat-free. It's wonderful in fiber if you keep that skin on. So keep the skin on when you're eating your zucchini. And then it's also great in vitamin C, potassium. So it is just great for us. Now, as far as keeping that zucchini and how long can you keep it, it is going to be something you want to put in your refrigerator. Put it in a bag, and about 3 to 5 days you can keep it in your refrigerator. But also keep it where you're not going to bruise it up to something that's in the refrigerator, because it does bruise very easily. And if I just took my finger and rubbed it down, the skin would come off very easily too. So just keep it to where it's not going to get banged up in your refrigerator, get it bruised, because you know when things get bruised, they're going to decay, and the product of this product is not going to be as good as if it was all intact like it needs to be. So you can see zucchinis are definitely something you want to put on the menu and put in your garden if you haven't. So you can see exactly how fast it grows, how wonderful it is for your diet, and I will say, put it next time on your list as far as something you're going to eat, something different, something new. But right now, let's go check out what Frank has growing in that garden. And I am going to be amazed, and I know you're going to be amazed on how well that corn is growing in that garden. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden of Lights.
Okay, today we're going to talk a little bit about sweet corn. I get a lot of calls from folks trying to grow sweet corn, and some do well with it and others have a lot of trouble. The last week or so we talked about tomatoes. We got out here this morning and picked our tomatoes. We weighed them. We got 25 pounds of tomatoes off of these plants right here in this row, and they all look pretty good. So far we're happy with our tomatoes. But today we're going to get into sweet corn. Sweet corn is not hard to grow, but sweet corn moves out pretty fast when it gets started, and so you got to keep up with it. So you get your seed planted, put some fertilizer down before you plant it, do a soil test, all of the basic things that you do before you plant. But once you plant it and it comes up, when it gets about a little over ankle high, you got to come in and side dress it a little bit. It's a fairly heavy user of fertilizer, and so this corn you're looking at behind me right here, it was side dressed at about ankle high, and it was side dressed again about knee high, and then it's taken off, and so it's grown tall. This is Silver Queen sweet corn, so it's not tall like some of your field corn might be, but so you got to stay after it. If you don't do that, it's going to grow up and it's going to be stunted and it's going to be short, and you're not going to make any corn. The other thing about corn is it's pollinated by the wind, and so the pollen falls. There's lots of pollen on these tassels here. Most of this is falling off. The pollination takes place over a period of about a week or so, and it'll all fall. And enough of it falls to get on the silk, and each piece of silk is attached to a kernel of corn. Once the tassels start to form, corn becomes a heavy user of water. Up until that point, we get away with about 3/4 to 1 inch of water a day. But once that tassel starts forming, we move up to 3/4, 8/10 to an inch per week is what I meant to say. But once it tassels, it can move up to 2.5 to 3 inches of water that's required to form this corn like it ought to be formed. So once you start forming tassels, you need to up the water on the corn to keep it growing. So it has to stay healthy. These leaves have got to be protected because that's where your photosynthesis is coming from. That's bringing in the sugars to form the ear corn. Now, once it starts to silk, that pollen falls on this silk. Each one of these silks is attached to a kernel of corn. So each kernel gets pollinated independently of the others. That's why sometimes you might see a skip on the ear of corn where it didn't get pollinated. So these are attached. The pollen falls in here and it goes down. It takes about a day for it to come down here and pollinate the kernel, and the kernel starts to grow. And when it does, then the silk falls away. Right now the silk is attached to these kernels right here. It's not falling away. The number of rows that you would have on Silver Queen corn is generally talked about as being 14 to 18. And that's in the genetics, that's formed way down in early stages of growth, determines how many kernels. It's an even number always, but it'll determine how many kernels you have. The length of the ear and the number of kernels that get pollinated on that ear, that gets determined because of your fertility and your water. And so you grow your nice long ear here, and then once all this is pollinated, the silk will fall away. So this particular one I got here for a sample is the silk is still attached to the kernels because it hadn't been pollinated. So if we take a look, and I haven't looked at any of this corn yet, it's not quite time for us to be picking this corn, but it's getting pretty close. So if we look at this corn, we'll get to it here in a second. When you see that silk just falls away from the kernel because this has been pollinated. And you see here, we're starting to form a pretty nice ear of corn right here. I don't see any skips on this ear of corn. It's so now we're ready to just keep putting the water to it till this develops, and it's going to develop into a really nice ear of sweet corn. So that's just a few tips about what goes on with growing corn. Right at the prime time for this corn to be pollinated, we had a heavy rainstorm, like 5 inches of rain that knocked the pollen off. And I was a little bit concerned. In fact, I came out here after it dried a little bit, and I got this little vacuum cleaner that I suck bugs up with, and I got some of that pollen, and I put it on some of them that look like they may be lacking a few pieces. You can do that when you got a small garden. You can't do that if you got 5 acres. So I just try to make sure that this did get pollinated like it should. So we're making a good ear. In the home garden, you're better off to plant about 4 short rows than you are 1 long row, because that pollen has got to get on the silk in order to pollinate it. And if you got 1 long row and it rains and the wind blows the pollen off to the side, then you're going to have a lot of skips in your ear. So this is what we're trying to grow right here. All we got to do now is let it get mature enough. We don't want it to get too mature, but because we want it to be nice and sweet when we get ready to eat it. It's coming along pretty good. I think we'll be all right. So that's just a few tips on growing sweet corn. We're picking our tomatoes, and right now we're going to go inside and see what Susan is fixing. I hope it's as good as this here corn.
Welcome back to Garden Delights. Today we're talking about zucchini, and we're going to be making zucchini bread, and we're going to add just a little something to it to spunk it up, and I'm going to be adding some mini chocolate chips to it. And it's a very easy recipe. So what I want to do is, we're going to start with the zucchini part of it. I've already grated about a cup of it. Now I need to do 1 more cup for the recipe, so I'm going to go ahead and finish it out. This zucchini, you know, is a regular size. It wasn't too big as far as the diameter around. It was a nice size, and if you get one about so long, this will come up to about 2 cups of shredded zucchini. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for it and get that ready. So when I get ready, I'll be ready to put all the whole recipe together. And I will tell you, I love this little shredder. The only thing is it doesn't always stay in the little cup underneath, so I have to use every bit that comes out on this paper towel also. And also, when you are cooking with your vegetables, you know you have to wash them before you start using them. So I did wash my zucchini before I started shredding it. And I talked earlier, it's very important if you want to get the fiber to leave that skin on. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to try to get down to the nitty-gritty of this without getting my finger in there anywhere. And that's one thing you have to worry about when you're grating. You have to worry about where your finger is also. So that's about going to be what I need for that cup. And I will tell you, for this, you don't want to pack your zucchini. You want it loosely in there. So this is about a cup, and I'm just going to toss this into here. And that's about what 2 cups will look like for zucchini. So what I'm going to do is just kind of fold this up and put this over to the side. So I have my zucchini. So let's talk about the rest that I need. So I have 2 cups of all-purpose flour already in this bowl. And I also have, to make sure it's going to rise, I have a little bit of baking soda, which is about 1 1/8 teaspoons of it. And I also have a half a teaspoon of salt already mixed in. So what I'm going to do, because I'm going to do my dry ingredients first, and then we'll move into the wet ingredients. So I'm just going to kind of mix that up together. Now the next thing I also have, just to give it a little chocolate taste also, this is 1 tablespoon of cocoa powder. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in there also. And then I have also some brown sugar, and this is not packed, it's just loosely in there. That's about a half a cup. So I'm just going to put that in there. And we have also just regular sugar, and this is going to be about 1/3 of a cup. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. See if I can do some stacking over here. And what I want to do first for the dry ingredients, I do want to mix it up pretty well, because when you're baking and you're adding things like chocolate chips or something like that to it, it's really good if you can to take it also and coat a little bit of the flour in it, because when you're putting it with the rest of the batter, it keeps it from being all clumped in one area. So it does help it distribute through all what you're making. So if I'm making this bread, it's going to help it keep it where it's not all in one area of that bread. So I want it to be all through that bread, because I want people, when they slice it, to get a little bit of those mini chocolate chips. So these are their mini chocolate chips. I'm going to stack this over here. And this is a 1/2 cup. So I'm going to go ahead and mix those in, because I really want it to make sure that it's all through that flour. So once I have this where I need it, and this already smells really good. Just the cocoa and the chocolate chip smells really, really good. So once you have this done, which I feel like it's pretty covered really well, and also too, you want to make sure your sodium and your baking soda and your salt are mixed in really well with the flour also, because you don't want that on one side either, because you want to make sure it's going to rise and it's going to be even looking. So that looks really good. So let's start with the wet ingredients. So I'm going to go ahead and add, and I'm going to go ahead and use the same spoon. This is 2 cups of eggs that I have beaten up. So you didn't have to do it to make a lot of noise. And then also I'm going to go ahead and add, and this is 1 pretty ripe banana. So I'm going to go ahead and add it. And it's just going to get a little flavor to it. You can even, if you want to substitute, you could even substitute a little bit of applesauce if you wanted to. And if you're really looking for a way to get a little bit more fiber in this bread, you could also add 1 cup of plain flour and 1 cup of wheat flour if you want to try that also. Next is going to be, this is going to be 3 tablespoons of butter that is melted. So I'm going to go ahead and add it, because I want to get all my wet ingredients all put in there. This is buttermilk, and this is a 1/2 cup of buttermilk. So I'll put that in there. And then this is also 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So I'm going to add that. And what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to kind of stir this around. The next thing you're going to add is the zucchini. So I'm going to add the zucchini to the wet part of it. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And make sure I get all of it, because it does make the bread really, really nice. So I'm going to mix it around, make sure it gets really well with the other liquids before I add all the dry ingredients. And the good thing about it, you could use a mixer, but the recipe is going to tell you that you can just stir it around and mix it together, and it works really well because it does have enough liquid in there. So I'm just going to kind of dump a little bit in it. And I'm going to mix it a little around, because if you have a mixer, you know if you mix the dry ingredients last, they're going to fly everywhere. So it's good sometimes just to kind of incorporate a little bit around, get that moisture going before you turn it into a mixer. And you really don't have to mix this a whole lot, even with the spoon, because it just mixes really well. It's just enough wet ingredients. So I'm going to add the rest of this flour. And I'm going to get this mixed up really well. And then you're going to put this in a loaf pan, and you're going to bake it for about 45 to 60 minutes depending on your stove. And also you want to make sure that when it comes out that it's clean with like a toothpick or whatever you're going to use to stick it. You do want to make sure that it is cooked thoroughly all the way through, and you don't see any batter that needs to be cooked a little bit longer. So you may have to work with that part of it. So I do have a pan that I'm going to grab right quick. And my pan also, it has been sprayed, so keep it from sticking, so we don't want it to stick. And now I'm going to go ahead and add the batter to it. So I'm going to see if I can get all this batter in. And if you could smell just the part right now before it ever cooks, it's amazing how well it smells. And I'm going to try to get every bit of it, which I am doing really good getting it out of here. All right, so I'm just going to kind of spread it around to make sure all the corners are even. And also, I just like to push it down because it kind of keeps the air bubbles that are in the, it kind of keeps it consistency is when it's baking also. So I just kind of push it around my spoon just to kind of keep it even. And so now you have it in your pan. You're going to put it in the oven at 325. So, and you're going to bake it 45, 55 minutes, depending on your stove, and it could take longer. So it just depends. So once you get it ready, it is ready to bake. So I'm going to go ahead and stick it in. And like I said, 325, 45 to 55 minutes, and your bread is going to be awesome. So we'll see you back in just a little bit on Garden of Lights. Welcome back to Garden of Lights. Frank, we have zucchini bread with a little twist. It's got mini chocolate chips in it, and I can smell the chocolate from here, and I can't wait to cut it.
All right, it looks good to me too. You know, we got some pretty good zucchini up there in the garden.
I was bragging about it. I said, Frank's zucchini looks really good, and look at this.
But I didn't grow any chocolate chips up there.
You sure didn't.
So
Too bad you didn't.
All right, we wouldn't have got that out of the garden.
You got that right. I love bread like this. It just cuts really good. And zucchini to me makes it moist, and I can't wait to dig into it. That's good.
Good.
It's really moist. You can take this little bit of that banana that I have in it, just a little bit.
This is my kind of snack.
Me too. And you know what? This type of snack to me is you can take it and heat it up or eat it next day for breakfast, and you just can't beat it. It's really good, very moist. And the zucchini, you can barely see it, but you can see just a little bit of it. But I was also impressed with your garden and how well you're doing in the back of our office space.
Yeah, the tomatoes finally got ripe. We went out there and picked 25 pounds of them on the first round. And I looked out there a little while ago, and there's some more of them that are getting ripe. So
wow.
We're going to have to do something with tomatoes. Maybe next show, if I can get out of my office for the tomatoes, we'll talk about tomatoes.
Well, I can tell you one thing. Your zucchini is really good.
That corn out there is going to be good too, out there in the back.
I'm looking forward to tasting it also.
It's, I already did. It's pretty good.
Well, I'm going to have to finish this bread up sometime
All right.
today, and very quickly. Check out their website. I know you're going to love this recipe. And Frank and I will see you next time on Garden of Lights.
We're going to finish eating.